Good afternoon, and welcome to our first annual Food Entrepreneurship Forum. My name is Kobla Asamoah. My role is Head of Small Business for Hot Bread Kitchen. For more than a decade, I have worked closely with those that have been brave enough to launch a business. And one of the things I have found is that, frankly, we need more Black-led businesses. Beyond that, we need a clearer path to growth and scale for Black-owned businesses. Entrepreneurship is a path to economic independence and transferable wealth. Without the presence and example of more Black-led businesses, how can we incentivize these entrepreneurs to, as Starbucks founder Howard Schultz put it, risk more than others think is safe and dream more than others think is practical? Entrepreneurship also provides the agency. It directly impacts consumer bias by providing diversity of product and of people. But how do we get there? I'd like to start with a story about entrepreneurship. The story of two entrepreneurs that we at Hot Bread Kitchen have had the pleasure to work with. Mohammed and Rahim Diallo spent their childhood in Guinea, West Africa, drinking homemade ginjan, a West African ginger juice sweetened with pineapple and spiced with a hint of aniseed. When the brothers immigrated to New York City, they searched all around for the taste of home, a glass of fresh ginjan. While they found it in small shops and in African restaurants, it was never consistently as good as they remembered from their childhood, the way mom used to make. With the goal to embed African culinary tradition within American culture, the two decided to make and sell the first high-quality branded version of that juice and called the company Ginjan Brothers. The brothers joined our organization, Hot Bread Kitchen's Culinary Incubator, in 2015 to test the idea for their business. Mohammed worked full-time at a job during the day. Rahim took a second job at night. And during the moments in between, they were in the kitchen making juice. This is the essence of entrepreneurship. The Diallo brothers recognized a gap in the marketplace and they filled it, all the while using food and business as a way to express who they are, their traditions, their story. And I'm proud to say that Hot Bread Kitchen played a part in that journey. We made introductions to retailers. We connected them with real estate developers for their cafe. We provided low-cost kitchen space for them to launch and to grow. Along the winding journey to the American dream, the brothers have achieved many milestones. They've attained regional distribution at Whole Foods Market. They were chosen to be a seller to Walmart, and they even won FedEx's Small Business of the Year title. Last year, they even opened up a beautiful cafe in the heart of Harlem on 125th Street and Park. But for all the milestone successes that the Ginjan brothers have achieved with their business, they continue to face significant barriers to true scale and growth. Some of these are operational and common to all food businesses. But the primary ones, they're systematic, and they speak to the historical barriers and lack of access for Black entrepreneurs. This includes access to networks and connections, a cultural understanding of the entrepreneur's product, and in the case of the Ginjan brothers, the scale capital required to achieve meaningful growth. In fact, if you look at the investment landscape for venture capital across industries, Black entrepreneurs only attain 1% of VC funding. These types of challenges are why organizations like Hot Bread Kitchen exist and why we are hosting this forum. Hot Bread Kitchen is a nonprofit organization that believes in a food system that equitably compensates talent and sustains a diverse workforce while celebrating culinary tradition and innovation. Our work helps immigrants and people of color thrive as workers and entrepreneurs within the food system, and is helping to make the system itself a more conscious and equitable one for all. We live this through our work and the impact of the people that we serve. For food businesses like Jinjan, we provide and we bring to bear a track record of working with businesses who have, in spite of the barriers that I mentioned earlier, been able to get onto the other side of small. We've also have the experience of building our own food brand, as well as all of the learnings and the relationships that come with that experience. But we haven't been able to solve every problem. The COVID-19 pandemic is only the most recent example of the disparity in capital access for Black entrepreneurs. Think about the recent PPP loan money that was made available. Less than 2% went to Black-owned entrepreneurs. We need to move beyond gestures to brass tacks, to actionable movement in this space. As one article put it, we are over-mentored and undercapitalized. So over the next few days, I invite you to join as we discuss solutions. You will hear from some amazing people in the food space on a variety of topics related to small business. You will meet some promising entrepreneurs and maybe even get to see or taste some of their delicious products. And you'll hear them pitch their food business concepts to buyers and customers. Finally, you'll get to be part of our movement to elevate and promote these folks while making the way for a more equitable food industry. So why are we doing this now? Well, frankly, COVID has left us unable to leverage our traditional means of fostering opportunities for the various businesses that we support. However, it's presented an opportunity to partner with other like-minded organizations and stakeholders to create a national platform to showcase the amazing products of these businesses. In addition, we are grappling with the call for racial justice that has echoed not only in New York, but across the country and across the globe. In short, if not now, when? So let's get started on a few days of exciting and, dare I say, delicious conversations. And now, I get the pleasure of hosting the first panel of amazing and influential people in the food and entrepreneurship space, which focuses on collaboration amongst supporters of small business. But before we get started, I want to introduce an amazing partner in supporting small business. All of us, from nonprofit incubators to local government, financial institutions to grocery buyers, restaurants to diners, have a part to play in maintaining a healthy small business ecosystem. A longtime supporter of small business and a partner of Hot Bread Kitchen, Citi has been a leader in investing in Black entrepreneurship and developing solutions to build a more equitable future for all entrepreneurs. Here to talk about Citi's work to promote racial equity in entrepreneurship and to introduce our first panel, Incubating Equity, is Colleen Galvin, Senior Vice President of Community Investing and Development at Citi. In her role at Citi, Colleen leads a team of relationship managers who partner with nonprofits and municipal agencies to promote financial equity and inclusion for all. She joined Citi after serving as an assistant commissioner at NYC Small Business Services and currently serves on the board of 2 microfinance organizations, Business Centers for New Americas and Acción East. Colleen has been a longtime champion of Hot Bread Kitchen, and we are grateful that she's able to join us. Colleen?
Wow, thank you so much, Kobla, for that warm introduction, and thank you for having me today. I really want to commend the Hot Bread Kitchen team and all of the panelists for their leadership, innovation, and perseverance over the past 7 months. Like the entrepreneurs you serve, you've been resourceful and relentless in your efforts to help your clients survive during these tough times. At Citi, we too understand that entrepreneurship can be a path to economic independence and asset building, in particular for vulnerable people. And we know there's an important role for local governments and nonprofits to play in that success, as you'll hear from the panelists. About 5 years ago, Citi partnered with SBS, HBK, and the New York City Housing Authority to create a program that helped public housing residents with startup food businesses formalize and grow. HBK hosted a number of the program's grads at their facility, and there are some great success stories there. We've also been able to connect small food vendors to opportunities at the annual Harlem Eat Up celebration Citi sponsors, as well as at our headquarters dining facility downtown, which is managed by Restaurant Associates, part of Compass Group. I believe Compass Group is participating in this event later in the week. We don't just love food and food entrepreneurs in New York City. Citi has also supported La Cocina's great work on the West Coast. I've heard from my colleagues about their constant advocacy for small business commercial space in the Bay Area. And in Miami, a colleague who was actually the founding executive director of La Cocina has supported a food incubator housed on the campus of Florida International University. Of the more than 30 businesses at Startup FIU Food, not one has had to close since the pandemic hit. Speaking of, within a few short weeks of the onset of the pandemic, Citi unrestricted or pivoted more than 85% of our philanthropic dollars, and this allowed partners to be more responsive to the immediate needs of their communities in the wake of the crisis. We also provided an early round of CDFI grants totaling $7.5 million, and to date, we have committed more than $100 million in support of relief and recovery globally. On the small business front, Citibank made 30,000 PPP loans totaling $3.4 billion, and you might be surprised to know that 72% of those loans went to businesses with 10 or fewer employees. Citi is now donating its PPP net proceeds of about $25 million to support community development financial institutions across the US. In May, we also created a purchasing facility to assume $50 million in PPP loans from minority depository institutions, or MDIs. These are your Black-owned, Black-led banks serving Black communities, and this provided them with much needed liquidity. Citi has been working in the racial equity space for some time. I thought a lot of Kobla's remarks were very pointed and really resonated with me. With renewed attention on racial equity in the US over the summer, we donated $10 million to 4 national organizations fighting for racial justice. But in September, we announced more than $1 billion in strategic initiatives over the next 3 years to help close the racial wealth gap. Our action for racial equity has several components, and beyond philanthropy, leverages resources and expertise across various teams within our businesses. Today, I'm just going to focus on pieces of the plan that increase investment in Black-owned businesses. I mentioned before our relationship with several MDIs. They are already part and parcel of our ATM community network, which allows their customers access to our ATMs free of charge. So building on that, we will now also provide MDIs with up to $50 million in growth capital for even greater liquidity for them to serve their communities. And we'll invite MDIs to participate in up to $50 million in loan opportunities so they can participate in larger deals. As Kobla said, we know Black-owned businesses have long faced obstacles in accessing capital. They are the most likely to apply for bank financing, but get turned down at twice the rate as white business owners. And in the venture capital space, again, that 1% is a really, really sad figure that we need to turn around. Part of our plan is to allocate an additional $50 million to the Citi Impact Fund exclusively to support businesses owned by Black entrepreneurs. We kicked off this fund earlier in the year with $150 million for businesses developing solutions to social and environmental challenges. Now, at that time, 10% of the fund was earmarked for seed stage minority and women-owned businesses. So this $50 million is on top of that commitment. Lastly, we also committed to increase city procurement spend with certified diverse suppliers from 700 million to 1 billion annually, including 250 million just for Black-owned firms. So in closing, we know many banks are making similar such commitments right now, and we welcome these. We're all together at the Business Roundtable talking about solutions, comparing best practices. This problem is too large for any one institution to solve. It's going to take all of us working together. I want to thank you all again for the time. I'm very excited about your agenda over the next 3 days. I hope you thoroughly enjoy this panel, the conference, and the new business opportunities presented over the next few days. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Kobla.
Thank you, Colleen. And now I would like to introduce and jump right into this panel. Incubating Equity. Panelists, if you wouldn't mind both unmuting yourself and revealing yourself. And audience out there, just a reminder, you can put questions in the Q&A. And if you see a question that's already there that you want to ask, just hit the thumbs up and that will elevate it to the top. All right. Great. Why don't we jump right in? So why don't we start with introductions? If we could go around the room and give a quick introduction of yourselves. Thank you, first of all, for Geetika Agrawal, Dynishal Gross, Jen Faigel, and Devita Davison for joining. Geetika, why don't we start with you? If you could just tell us who you are, your organization, and what your mission/focus has been historically.
Hi, everyone. My name is Geetika Agrawal. I'm the program director at La Cocina. We are a San Francisco-based food business incubator program. Our mission is to serve talented low-income entrepreneurs that are looking to formalize their informal businesses. So we were born out of the enterprising spirit of Latina organizing and Latina entrepreneurs in the Mission District, folks selling elotes and things, and have since then grown because of the breadth and talented of women of color from all different under-supported communities who have come to La Cocina and turn the resources into some really amazing food businesses. And that really continues to be the core of our focus in this pandemic.
Thank you. Jen?
Thanks, Kobla, and thanks for having us. I'm Jen Faigel. I'm the executive director of CommonWealth Kitchen, coming at you from Boston, Massachusetts, and we are Boston's version of what La Cocina in San Francisco and Hot Bread Kitchen in New York are doing, and my friend Devita in Detroit as well. So we run a food business incubator development center. Our mission is to build a new food economy grounded in racial, social, and economic justice. And we changed our mission statement about a year ago to really lean into the racial justice piece. And obviously today that feels more relevant than ever in the work that we're doing. Our work is like our partners, we run a shared kitchen, we provide business and technical support. We also run our own food manufacturing operation. And so we actually help our companies scale their manufacturing work, which is an unusual piece of our business. And it's a way also for us to aggregate lots of part-time jobs into full employment on our staff. And we work a lot on market access. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about access to retailers, access to anchor institutions. We work with corporations, and obviously in this moment, which we'll talk about, most of that is on hold. And so that's been a super challenging time for us right now. And so in some ways, Kobla, to your point, now more than ever, like, if not now, when? If not us, who? And so we're excited to continue to try to lift up the important work that our organizations are doing.
Thank you, Jen. Dynishal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dynishal Gross. I work here in New York City at the Department of Small Business Services, and I want to apologize. I seem to be having some trouble with the internet connection. If it's briefly interrupted, It's coming back in a matter of seconds, so apologies if that happens. My work at SBS is as a deputy commissioner, and I lead the team there that is part of the oversight for our city's MWBE program. So we help businesses understand what an MWBE program can do to support them in engaging with government as a client. We deliver capacity building programs to help them have the insights and resources they need to successfully market themselves to government and compete for government contracts. And this is all in the context of SBS's work as a city agency that's just a small business supporter and booster, helping entrepreneurs launch and grow new businesses, helping companies locate and remain in the 5 boroughs through a variety of incentive programs, and helping entrepreneurs prepare for and respond to emergencies, whether those be physical or financial. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here today and excited to meet all of my fellow panelists.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dynishal. Your internet worked great, by the way.
Awesome.
Davita?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on the panel, Kobla, and to your colleagues at Hot Bread Kitchen for hosting this conference over the next 2 days. My name is Devita Davison, and I identify as an African-American, a first-generation Detroiter, and I go by the pronouns of she, her, hers. And I am the executive director of FoodLab Detroit. And let me first just start off by saying at FoodLab Detroit, we believe that the power of the people is stronger than the people in power. And it was really important that I lift that up because unlike my colleagues who are doing amazing work in New York, amazing work in San Francisco, and of course, amazing work in Boston, FoodLab Detroit is also an incubator and accelerator, but we don't have our own kitchen. We believe in the power of the people, and everything that we do believe that change comes from the grassroots, from the bottom up, not the top down. And so what that means is that FoodLab, instead of having our own shared use commercial kitchen space, we launched and founded and kicked off a program that was called Detroit Kitchen Connect. And that means that our kitchen space lies in the community. It's a distributed network of kitchen spaces that take advantage of underutilized church kitchens, where we place the entrepreneurs and the community of entrepreneurs that are in the FoodLab organization. And so for us, building the capacity of our organization, and I know we'll get into that, really looks like collaboration. And so our kind of kitchen resides all across the city of Detroit. But I want folks to imagine FoodLab Detroit is this organization that's a spoke in the middle of the wheel, might I say. And really our mission, as Kobla wants us to lift up, our mission is to democratize the flow of power. We feel like we need to interject because currently power and wealth and resources have all moved predominantly to a corporate power-fueled food system, and it's killing us. And so FoodLab Detroit anchors our work on what an equitable food-orientated local food system looks like. And so our goal is to create an entire food economy in the city of Detroit that acknowledges the importance of food justice, community health, local ownership, and sustainability. And so the core of our work at FoodLab is we seek to support food leaders, looks like chefs and cooks and restaurateurs, so they could build a healthier and more equitable and sustainable food system. We primarily work with BIPOC-owned food businesses. And for folks who don't know the acronym of BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, People of Color. And we do that a few ways. So we have a paid 6 months fellowship opportunity. We provide education and resources. We provide mentoring. And it looks like for us, peer-to-peer mentoring, and then an exchange of resources. And so for us, we think by doing that, our aim is to really improve Detroit's neighborhoods, our social and built environment, by democratizing what good food really is, and to make sure that all Detroiters have the opportunity to take part in the development of a delicious, of a culturally appropriate, and by all means, a local food economy in the city of Detroit. So thank y'all. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Devita. You know, just jumping right into the pandemic and its impact on both small business as well as your operations. You know, how has small business, how has it impact you in your respective cities, and how's that really forced you to adjust your operations, if at all? And what are the new challenges entrepreneurs are going to face in the year going forward? You know, and I'll start with you, Jen, up in Boston.
Thanks for that. You know, the COVID pandemic has been terrible. I mean, I think I speak for everybody that the pain and suffering of our small business community, of the people that they employ, that are the people that are least able to be unemployed in this moment, the numbers of people who are undocumented, living paycheck to paycheck, that's the business owners, sadly, as well as their employees. Like, this is not the moment to be in the situation that they're in, especially I guess all of us in the northern climates of looking into the winter and what winter is going to mean for food businesses. For CommonWealth Kitchen, when COVID hit, every single one of our businesses was impacted, and almost all of them have shut down. In our current businesses and our network of businesses that we've supported, which is about 200 businesses or so that we're actively working with in some way, more than half are not working. It's devastating to see what's going on right now. And looking at what's coming feels like it's going to get worse, particularly given the lack of leadership at city, state, and federal government. I think we all know this. For us at CommonWealth Kitchen, not only were we watching our businesses all, the domino effect for our businesses, but for ourselves as well. So for us, 40% of our annual budget was coming from earned revenue from the operation of our shared kitchens and from the manufacturing work that we do for colleges, hospitals, and others. So over $1 million of our own budget just evaporated overnight. That is not a small amount of money. So we were just as devastated as our businesses owners were, and also had to really look at what we were doing, because we are used to being cheerleaders for small business and being their best advisors and supporters. And all of a sudden we found ourselves saying, whoa, time out, stop, take a breath, go get unemployment, don't use your credit card, right? We had to really change what we were doing to support our companies, but also have to really lean into our advocacy work around resources to support those businesses, around changing the tax rules, like anything we could do that was going to support them. And the other thing that we did was look around at these businesses and all the food that was sitting around that was destined for other places and was now sitting in my freezer, and all the workers who were sitting there and saying, we have to feed people. This is the moment where we need to step in. And so our organization launched something we called Common Table, because when you have more than you need, build a longer table, not a taller fence. And what that really did was to use our ability to go find grant funding from government, from corporations, and literally move it through our bank account to pay business owners of color to feed their neighbors. And so over the last 5 months, we've invested almost $1.5 million, and we have produced over 95,000 meals that have gone to families in need. And obviously, when you think about this as these are culturally relevant, we are working with businesses that are from every corner of the globe. And so that's been a really powerful exercise to put people back to work, but it is still a Band-Aid. And so while I want to celebrate the fact that we've been able to do that work, I also want to look and say, this is not how we fix poverty. This is not how we empower people. Like, it's great that we were able to put, and I should say 95% of the businesses we invested in are BIPOC owned, Black immigrant people of color owned, because that's the work. Nonetheless, if we don't start looking at long-term recovery strategies that are about economic prosperity and self-sufficiency, we're never going to make it to the next step. And so our work now is really looking at what are the advocacy things we can do with government and other places to think about procurement, for example, and what can we do to use procurement tools to say, hey, we need to be having all of the school food be made in the city of Boston. We need to have, fill in the blank. And I think that's the next direction for us. Again, these are relatively short term as we watch and see what happens long term. I think we're all facing a new reality that even when businesses start to open and office buildings start to open again, that people are eating differently. They're not all going back to their office buildings. They are like, it's gonna be different, and our work is gonna have to continue to pivot and change and continue to be entrepreneurial, just like our business owners. And so that's why we have been trying to find partnerships with all of you just to figure out what on earth do we do? What are the best practices? But man, I'll tell you, I thought it was hard being executive director of a nonprofit before COVID. This is unbelievable. But excited to at least not be in this by ourselves.
Thank you so much, Jen. Devita, have you experienced some of the same challenges and pivots, if you will? I promised I wouldn't use the word pivot, but here we are.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. I know how you feel. And I first want to start off by acknowledging and by saying that at FoodLab Detroit, we are in full support of Black liberation. And we believe in holding space for the righteous rage and the grief that is currently moving through and within our communities. This particular anti-Blackness of this COVID-19 pandemic and this state-sanctioned violence that is overwhelming and devastating our communities is making it tremendously hard for independently owned businesses to operate. And it makes it unimaginable for them to navigate during these times. So yeah, has the COVID-19 crisis impacted the work that we do at FoodLab? Absolutely. And I just want to say that I stand in full solidarity with my colleagues in Boston and in San Francisco, and of course in New York, who are at this particular time fighting, advocating, resisting anti-Blackness and systemic racism. But more importantly, y'all are really doing the work to help Black entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and folks of color practice self-determination, because that's what ownership really means to us, the opportunity to be free and what that really looks like. And it's hard. And so the way that it has impacted our community is the disproportionality of how COVID has impacted Black communities in the city of Detroit. Black folks only make up 14% of this state in Michigan, but we make up 40% of the infections and death of the virus. I'm talking about people dying. And so when we talk about has it impacted, absolutely. Because there's not an entrepreneur that I know that we work with at FoodLab that does business in primarily Black-owned communities who have not themselves been impacted by COVID. Their parents have been impacted by COVID. Their grandparents have been impacted by employees. They have lost employees as a result of death. They have lost people in their communities as a result of death. This amount of grief and death that is impacting our communities, and you expect for them to operate businesses through it all. And so just taking the opportunity to understand the conditions that in which they are working in, that's number one. Number two, and I think, Kobla, you already mentioned it, is the disproportionality of how funds and relief funds have been allocated to BIPOC-owned businesses, right? And so what we know is that 90% of Black-owned businesses that apply for PPP have been denied, right? And so also, as a result of that, 40% of Black-owned businesses have shuttered. They ain't coming back. And so we really need to understand what this means, particularly for us at FoodLab. And I'm piloting, I don't want to use that word pivot, but I'm piloting, and I did it, this was the first year we did it, FoodLab Chicago, but how this is impacting kind of Black-owned communities. And so in the city of Detroit, what we know, and this is just a little bit of statistics, that last year, between 2009 and 2019, last year they did a report, and they said that the jobs in the restaurant industry grew by 18%. 18% of growth that was related in just the restaurant industry. What we know now nationwide, 13 million folks are restaurant workers across the nation. And we know that a fourth to a third of restaurants won't be open. And so my question is, what are we going to do about the unemployed restaurant workers that we're going to have to contend with? And so the work that we do at FoodLab and the work that we do now and the work that we did and the work that we continue to do now is we work to build power. And the reason why it's so important for us to build power and begin to talk about what does this social movement look like outside of just a particular food movement is we got to fight on so many fronts, y'all. And so one of the things that's super important to us is the ability for our entrepreneurs to provide good paying jobs to restaurant workers. It is so important because many of them are the lifeline of employment for folks in our community. And so sustainability for us and the work for us is really looking like continuing to help our entrepreneurs keep their doors open so they can continue to employ Detroiters, paying them not a minimum wage, but a living wage. And for us, that looks like joining hands with the Fight for 15 that's happening across the country, advocating for good paying jobs. For us, what that also looks like is advocating for our agricultural community. Detroit is the epicenter for urban agriculture, and that looks like the ability for them to locally source their ingredients from Black farmers and Indigenous and farmers of color. And in order to do that, they have to be sustainable so they can support the farmers as well. And so it's about movement building, Kobla. It's about moving building, Rita. It's about movement building, Jen. That's what we're talking about. How are we building power? By coming together as a solid, as a strong kind of movement along the ecosystem. And so that's the work that we're going to do, and that's the work we're going to double down on, and that's the work that we're going to continue to do. And we invite folks to join us in this work as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Devita. Dynishal, you have the task of a whole city, right, as a city agency in supporting the small businesses. How's your work had to pivot, change in this time?
You know, we have had to stand up brand new financing programs, emergency loan and grant programs, just to support, small business survival in the gap between the availability of federal funds and the beginning of the local shutdowns in New York City. As these owners of restaurants and other food manufacturing businesses began to grapple with the fact that, public health considerations were going to impact their operations in a way that would make it impossible, for them to meet payroll. And so one of the first things that SBS did was stand up a small business emergency grant and loan programs, first locally funded, later on, reimbursed with federal dollars to target micro businesses in the city. So these are our bodegas where folks, get their morning coffee, get their bacon, egg, and cheese. These are, small neighborhood restaurants. And, the mayor made a commitment, I think on a Thursday or Friday, that those funds would be available to businesses in their bank accounts the following week. And so SBS's staff, our whole commitment of staffing has shifted so significantly during COVID. If you were processing MWBE applications, certification applications, in January, you were working to help small businesses get through the paperwork for a microloan in March or April. And we have devoted staff resources to ensure that, the gaps that we're aware of exist and impact communities of color and prevent them from accessing capital through traditional means, did not disproportionately harm those businesses in the city. And we were able to distribute 60% of those loans to and grants to MWBEs in the city. And they were, instrumental during that time. And since then, as the city has begun reopening in phases, there's a lot of new regulation in place, and it's always difficult in a city as big as New York with a built environment that's as complicated and as many regulatory partners as we have in city government for a small business to navigate that. I mean, navigating that information, simplifying it, and streamlining small business regulation to what's really required for health and safety is a long-term project of SBS, and being a voice in city government that advocates for those small business owners is a long-term project. But in this COVID moment where things were changing constantly and the state was also imposing its own regulation, in some cases sending in its own inspectors to be sure that small businesses weren't being caught in that friction. We stood up a small business hotline. It's hard to envision, honestly, how it will ever come down, because the ability of small businesses to reach out directly to an advocate who's cross-trained and empowered with information to help them cut through all of that red tape has been instrumental. And hearing from the field what their needs are, it has been, just critical for us at this time. And there are local stories here, and it's great to see the diversity of municipalities represented on this panel. And in New York, there's hyper-local stories. The neighborhoods are not all set up the same. The commercial districts aren't impacted in the same ways. The physical setups are different. So when the city is considering, policy innovation, like allowing open streets or open restaurants, to have the capacity to reach those businesses on the neighborhood level, to understand what is their access to the equipment that they need to set that up, what are the sidewalk conditions, the ramping conditions, the power issues, the drainage issues, the vermin issues, and really make a change like that informed by what's actually happening on the ground, and then responsive, flexible enough to meet the needs of neighborhoods. It has been an incredibly dynamic time, and I think at a time where the city is also in a budget crisis, in a fiscal crisis, everyone at our team feels so grateful, honestly privileged to have this work focus during this time where we've been so isolated from one another, from our loved ones, to know that our work is contributing directly to our communities and to the New Yorkers who give of themselves and sacrifice time with their families to make these businesses survive and provide what our communities need at this time. It's been an incredible privilege, and I think we're very much inspired to continue pushing forward.
Thank you, Dynishal. And Geetika, how have you guys been coping out in the West Coast?
Well, I just want to first say thanks. It's really helpful to hear what everyone's doing, and Devita, to really keep us on track about how all these little moments, when I was listening to you talk about how in the end it comes down to food justice and Black liberation and this movement that we're building. I just think it's, it's really helpful to have a moment. I know, I'm sure I'm like the rest of you all, where I feel like, starting March, the first week of March, we started hearing from entrepreneurs here in San Francisco, I think especially because the tech industry was ahead on the work from home ordinances, which meant directly our businesses by the first week of March were experiencing anywhere between 40 to 70% income that just disappeared over the weekend. And then I think very quickly all of us started feeling that across the nation. But so I feel like, at La Cocina, as is our style, we just jumped right into the weeds. So it's nice to step back and hear everybody, and also remember that this is all part of a much more broader movement. For us, our focus immediately, as some context, over the last 15 years at La Cocina, we worked with 124 different entrepreneurs. 74 businesses are still active at La Cocina. And at this moment, we're actively engaged in supporting 65 businesses at all different stages. So since we're an incubator, it tends to kind of look like, in theory, a tapering of services. So I think that the first two things were in context was to start hearing phone calls from, businesses that have been out of our program for 8 years, and we keep in touch at galas and so on, calling us and saying, all 5 of my locations, like, are in the financial district and I don't know how to pay my employees tomorrow, you know, like that sort of, and also the intensity of the volume of that, I think was really, to me. And then the third thing is like, it's almost hard to remember, but how fast information was changing all the time and it didn't make sense. And it was all digital. And I think that's something that still sits in the back of my mind, that digital divide and how intensely I felt it. I think there's almost no signs posted anywhere, at least in San Francisco. So you just think about language. It was an intense time. We had a town hall that 70 people attended the first one, and a lot of entrepreneurs are just coming to us for one source of information. So it was definitely has been intense since March. Our thematic focus has been first on just trying to find ways to stop the bleeding. And for us, that looked like an emergency relief fund that we just started fundraising as La Cocina, expecting at some point, sort of knowing that it's silly to hope that some sort of aid would show up in any time, but especially in this current political climate. But, you know, still, like, I didn't really think that we would be the main source of relief for our entrepreneurs 10 months, you know, through December. But and then the more important things were really focusing on other operational costs and really pushing on people who have assets, whose assets grow, namely landlords and lenders, by supporting small businesses. And, you know, food business got deemed essential. We could analyze that, but so rent abatement and understanding how, you know, if everything's sheltered, that this is a public health emergency that needs to take priority and be held as a public health emergency rather than it's like economy, health, especially when the people that are going to risk their health are those that are least protected. And also, as Devita so eloquently put about the Black community in San Francisco, for sure reflected the same numbers. And then also the Latino community was highest hit. So you have the workers that are deemed essential being least protected and asked to go out to business without landlords or lenders wanting to have conversations about forgiveness or their investment. And even now, months later, we were lucky to get support from Gibson and Dunn law firm. So we're working with them and the business owners months down the line to try to work out rent agreements that, you know, again, Jen, I agree with you. What I've been thinking about is like that not only address what's happened, and so few of them have been willing to even give 1 month of rent forgiveness, which is so disgusting. There's no other word for it, because what I'm talking about to you guys is $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 for people who own multi-million-dollar assets, you know, and they get on the phone and they still talk to me about shared investment. So that's like, you know, it's not new work, but I think COVID really forces you to stare at the belly of the beast. And if COVID didn't, then, you know, the George Floyd and it's too much right now it's hard to find kind words to hide the things, you know? So that's kind of that other piece. And then the other part of it was trying to find sales, you know, with an understanding, a persistent understanding that this is a public health crisis, and it's still a public health crisis that we can't sell ourselves out of as customers, you know, even in San Francisco. And I love the well-intentioned, like, support our businesses, support our restaurants, and, you know, and it feels good now, you know, when I do want, you know, but I just, you know, for me, what's really hard for us at La Cocina, and that's the other part, is we're trying to understand advocacy has been something that we've done in action by building the ecosystem, by opening doors, by pushing partners to rethink their commission charges, to rethink who they're letting into the door. But I mean, like all of you are talking about, especially now in October, it's just disappointing to see what's coming, you know, and I live supposedly in a liberal bubble, and we have the loan programs, but loans are a false promise. You know, like, loans to me are investment in a future growth. They're not, this is a pandemic where we shut down the economy so that people didn't die. And especially the people we should be protecting are the ones that have the least amount of systemic protection. They're exploited, and they're also, you know, like their health protections are going away. And so I just think that that's part of maybe what's really frustrating to me is I'm not a public health expert. I'm a business person and a food person, but, you know, it's all connected. So that's kind of at the high level for us is that. And then it's so interesting to me see how people love to hear about the sales, right? But that for me, you know, that was our community food boxes where we would curated 10 items from an entrepreneur every week. We also advocated really hard for some of our entrepreneurs to be able to partake in the food insecurity programs that were government contracts or nonprofits. I think most people here are familiar with them, where you're brokering between the entrepreneur and a community that needs that food. I think I was disappointed by how hard it was to get some of our entrepreneurs in, and it's such a small percentage of the community. And I think there's a lot of last opportunity in the culturally relevant foods. That's why we're even able to get a toehold in, which is a whole other thing you could unpack. But in reality, our entrepreneurs are doing things like penne pasta and burgers and things that don't actually propel their, their survival income streams. And so we're going to continue to be creative. I mean, the one thing that I will say in October is that what I feel not at all surprised of, but once again, like just it's what gives me life, is to know that when the goal of the rent abatement fight, and also within our La Cocina kitchen, we did 100%. We haven't charged any rent since February. So we actually backdated it. We tried to lead with what we think other people should be doing across the other landlords. And then we also we're forgiving all of the debt that we can in the kitchen to try to, and the goal of all of that to me, we're in tech land over here, is to give entrepreneurs the opportunity to innovate. It's no accident that the tech industry had the opportunity to innovate, right? They've gotten philanthropy in the way of venture capital for years in order to build these businesses. And so that's really what I think about, is that by doing these actions, we tried to stabilize. And what we've seen is that our kitchen is more full than ever, is when given the chance, the entrepreneurs will continue to innovate. They will continue to understand where the market is, because that's what they are excellent at. What they need are the opportunity to do that. So that's kind of our focus for the big new things that we're focused on, is to continue to try to set them up for some sort of stable platform, and then continue to open doors for sales. And then the big new thing that changed for us is how we do services delivery. So without going into details, but one big thing that is a positive is that we're setting up many more learning circles so the entrepreneurs can share and learn with each other, because they're all experts now on how to respond to this pandemic.
That's really helpful, Geetika. And actually, you and everyone else seem to bring up elements of we can't do this alone, that there's a collaborative and coordinated effort that's required. And Devita, I'll ask you, and others feel free to chime in, is really about the role of collaboration in your work, and whether it's from local government or from other organizations involved in similar work in the community. How does collaboration piece fit in? And in the spaces where it hasn't happened yet, what would you like to see?
Yeah, you said something, Kobla, at the beginning of this panel, and I wrote it down because it was so important, around the mission and the goal of Hot Bread Kitchen is to create these businesses in a sustainable way, so that these entrepreneurs that you serve at Hot Bread will have the opportunity to transfer wealth, right? And what does that look like for y'all to do wealth building, so that the entrepreneurs and the small business owners that you work with will have the opportunity then to transfer that wealth on to someone in their family, the next generation. And what really scares me as it relates to this transfer of wealth, that what we are witnessing in this country right now is the largest transfer of wealth that we have ever seen in the United States of America. And so when we talk about collaboration, I just feel that absence the collaboration from our federal government, that the food industry, the restaurant industry, and the beverage hospitality industry more specifically, that support is going to fall on the states and the cities, absence any federal help. And what made my ears perk up when I, as a reason why I'm saying this, is because one of my fellow panelists said that the city of New York specifically is already in a budget crisis. Imagine if we get no help from the federal government, and it is dependent upon our cities and our states then to provide some relief to these small business owners that are located in their municipalities. And so when we talk about collaboration, yeah, I'm seeing some collaboration in Detroit, and I'm sure there's collaboration happening with city government in Boston and also in San Francisco. But what that kind of support looks like currently right now is the easing the path to commerce. So yeah, let's navigate city infrastructure and the bureaucracy. Oh, that's great. Let's provide small business owners with sandbags. Like, oh yeah, that's great. Oh, let's provide entrepreneurs the opportunity to do outside dining. Okay, that's fine. All of that does nothing but allow a pathway to commerce, because eventually what happens at the end of the day, the financial burden of support falls on you and me and individuals. We are the ones. That's why I talk about the power of the people. We are the ones that is going to be supporting small business owners and restaurants and locally owned food businesses in our community. That's what's happening, y'all. Like at the end of the day, that's what's happening. That's what's going down. So what do I want to see? Kobla, you ask? Like, we can't have a conversation about what I want to see in supporting small business unless we have a conversation about how small business really works in the food industry. So we can't talk about the food economy without talking about the labor that it's built on. We can't talk about labor without talking about how the labor, in many cases in the food industry, is labor that is built on oppressed Black and Brown Indigenous folks. And we can't have a conversation about the oppression of labor without having a conversation of what it really looks like for us to be able to provide reparations. And people like this, oh, Devita, we can't talk about reparations. Are you kidding me? We can't? Really? Do y'all know that we passed the largest relief package ever in the United States of America, even larger than what we spent on the Afghanistan war and the CARES Act? $4 trillion, y'all, is what we just spent. And did you know out of that $4 trillion, you wanna know how much corporations got? $2.3 trillion. You want to break that down even further? You want to know how much money the Cheesecake Factory got? $651 billion in tax breaks. Excuse me? And they laid off 41,000 employees, and they still got 50 million worth of tax breaks just in Cheesecake alone. And our cities only got $253 billion, but corporations got 2.3 trillion. Y'all, we gotta look at how we are allocating our resources and our dollars. That's what I'm trying to figure out. How is money moving and shifting so that we in San Francisco and in Boston and New York can do a better job of supporting these small business owners? Y'all, when we are already working with our arms behind our backs and our legs cut off, we're trying to make a way out of no way, which is what we always do, but it's unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And so, you listen, I want them to write the check. Where's the money? Plain and simple.
What can I just say, Devita, first of all, like, yay, can we all just thank Devita for like speaking truth to power always. Love you, my sister. But, and also to say that, like, what's so interesting to me in this is that, like, it can be done, right? So patios can be built, right? Airlines can be bailed out. It's about political will. So it's about where are we putting our energy, right? And for what purpose? And do we understand why? And so how we mobilize ourselves, how we look at intersectionality in the work that we do as we're building power, like, is really, really important. I will say very practically, like, I have been knocking my head in the Boston, like, progressive bubble, right? Like, just like in San Francisco. And man, my head is flat from hitting it against the wall, trying to get somebody to listen. And so, and that's at the city and the state level. Like, so I have to look at that and say, that is not where leadership is going to come from. And so back to the beginning of, in this moment, we have to be the solution, and we have to keep looking at each other to say, how are we working differently? And so for our organization, that has meant saying we got to lean even deeper in to our sister and brother organizations that are on the ground doing the same work. So, like, we have built some much stronger coalitions with the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, with Amplify Latinx, with, right, other organizations that are in that work with us, and say, okay, we have to leverage each other's resources and networks in this moment to develop a cohesive strategy that says it's not about food. It's not only about food. It's not only about business. It's not only about health. It's about all of these things. And we have to think about it from the entirety of this work, or we're not going to get there. But we also have to try to, like, figure out how to move the dime in a way where we have control. And so an example for us of this was this coalition of of groups that I mentioned, the Black Economic Council, Amplify Latinx, us and others, we actually put a loan fund together and we gave out 0% loans. We gave out almost $1 million in 0% loans at the beginning of the pandemic because we said, specifically to Black and Latinx owned businesses, because we said government's not going to show up. This was before PPP and EIDL, and obviously that showed us other things about that they weren't working, and that we needed to make sure that money went to the hands where it needed to be, and it couldn't be about credit, collateral, guarantee. It couldn't be the same stuff. It had to be, and it couldn't be, well, how am I going to get paid? When am I going to get paid? And if it couldn't be about power. It had to be about looking at a business owner and saying, this business needs to continue and we have to find a way to support them. And so I think this moment is a time for all of us to be working differently, to be thinking differently, to be working in coalition, to be working in solidarity, to finding our lanes and saying, okay, I got my piece, you got your piece, here's how I'm going to support and help you, and vice versa, because that is the only way we're going to get through it. Because the silver bullet, or so that's probably the wrong metaphor, but the check from government is not coming. And so we have to continue to build the future we want to see. And that for me is really changing how we do our work and really looking at how do you build a true solidarity economy.
I just have a couple things to add, I think, if you don't mind, Kobla. I think there's a lot of rich things to bring up. I mean, I definitely hear both of you, Devita. I really, I guess I just want to re-echo the frustration and the reality that I feel like we will keep fighting. I will keep fighting. But this is what I was trying to say. This is not, consumers can't, capitalism can't bail us out of this. Consumers can't bail. At some point, there is a need to really work at that structural level. And I hear, I saw loan funds. I didn't really get to say it, but in San Francisco, the only thing that came from the government were $10K grants that there was no transparency of how they got them. One of our entrepreneurs got them, which the La Cocina entrepreneurs are not at all the only people that need. That's what makes me crazy, is I'm like, these are 65 businesses where they have a support organization beside them, and we were on top of getting the information out for all the grants that came out. And most of our entrepreneurs for the first 3 months, the only grant funding they ever saw was the one that came from us, and that is depressing and also it just shows how disturbing it is. And I think, yes, find funds, but I'm ready for American Airlines to not get a bailout and for there to be real grant funding. And I think that's what I want to move away from a little bit, is as a business resource provider, I feel like I'm supposed to just be excited about loans, but I'm over loans. It's fine. Loans are for people, deserve more investment capital that is free and unrestricted to grow their businesses. People of color deserve that. Low income people deserve that. They've never gotten a chance to experience that kind of loan capital. That is a loan capital that only wealthy people get to play with, venture capitalists or just philanthropy for other rich white dudes. That they get to play with that free money stuff. But I'm ready for that real investment. And then the other part to me is about that advocacy. And I don't know what your experiences were, but here, there was an economic task force recovery that none of the small business providers heard about until it was put together. And they were no small business, none of our partners. We have an SFEDA, San Francisco Economic Development Alliance, and I didn't see anybody even on the list. So what signal does that send about whose voice is important and whose ownership is important? San Francisco, houses get sold based on knowing what businesses and restaurants you get listed. The city, small businesses are central to not just the cultural life, but the economic engine of the city. And they're not, but then when you get conversations about recovery and resiliency, I just don't see it on there. So I feel torn between being yes, I've always believed the answers in the grassroots. I've always found the more real answers, the real talk, the real work happening where we are. But how? It's also time to want and demand more. And obviously I'm terrified of what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And I'm also in a state that's burning, and it's not the economic state of the city, the context that I'm in isn't great either. But I also, and I can tell that my words are not practiced because it's almost like a new muscle, but it's sort of I've always felt this. I just couldn't get over how much the airline industry's got in those first 4 months. The 4 billion was the stat that I kept going over. And then I'd go talk to these landlords who couldn't seem to think that they can give even 1 month, for the month of March, when nothing was open. You couldn't even do takeout, unless you were a grocery store, you weren't open yet. Somehow everyone should pay rent. And I guess the last totally disconnected point I'll make is that what I didn't say out loud is that the first calls I got from entrepreneurs were not worrying about themselves. They called to ask, how am I going to pay my people? I can't let my people out. Like, they don't have anywhere to go. And I think that that's another thing to really lift up when you talk about Cheesecake Factory and who's getting the bailout and where does that money go? It's real. What I know of our entrepreneurs and small business owners that truly rely on talented labor, because restaurant labor is not a commodity like it gets treated. It's talented, invested labor. That they will actually retain jobs. They actually care about the outcomes that you hear about in economic development funding, but you don't see. And so that, I guess, is my other.
I mean, I'm hearing certainly that there's a frustration with resources, but certainly there's a policy question. Dynishal, what do you think cities should be doing to support minority and women-owned businesses at this time? You're on mute.
Sorry, thought I'd taken care of that. One of the first things that we did actually, because we operate capacity building programs for our MWBE firms, was to reduce the interest rate on our contract financing loans down to 0%. And the way the financing work is happening at the municipal level, it's, we are working with the resources we have at the time to roll out availability quickly, and then we're working for improvements. So working on, zero interest loans or grants for micro businesses, and then for those that got loans, working to continue raising capital so that we can move on to loan forgiveness. So it hasn't been possible to create the programs in the ideal ways as quickly as the demand is needed, but we're continuing to work in government and with private sector partners to improve those programs as we understand absolutely what Geetika is sharing, that the low cost capital in itself is not sufficient for this moment. So we certainly did that in our contract financing program, making that the process to get to those loans much simpler for emergency contracts in particular, because our emergency contracts have been exempted from our MWBE program from goals by law since our program was created. And so as soon as the state of emergency was issued and agencies were moving very quickly to be sure that hospitals and schools and all of our city institutions had what they need, those solicitations were going out without MWBE goals. And so one thing that we've paid attention to very quickly is, we're going to be in an emergency for a long time. This is not actually a short-term issue. And if we exempt those contracts from the program, then the exact communities that are being hit the hardest and that we have pledged to support are being excluded from serving their neighbors, from serving the city, and from a critical lifeline. And so at this point, city agencies have to consider MWBEs for every single emergency contract need, and affordable capital is available for them to mobilize. Because if you have to, procure, a good at a volume that you've never had before, or manufacture something at a speed to meet a city need that you haven't had to manufacture at before, the upfront costs to do that are prohibitive if you've also been locked out of the capital, you haven't had access to capital. And so we lend MWBEs up to $1 million now at 0% interest to perform on those contracts. And then, as they are paid back by the city, that loan is also getting paid back. So they end that contract with no debt. And in addition, we've seen the highest rate of applications to our program since the COVID emergency started than since I've been with SBS. 400, 500, 600 businesses a month raising their hands to say, yes, we want to be part of contributing to the city at this time. I analogized it to after 9/11, how people stood in line to give blood all over the country, even though those blood donations, they weren't going to make the Twin Towers, rise again. They weren't going to directly help people in New York, but folks want to be able to give something, and they want to be able to give in the way that they're best equipped to give. And so our corporate community, not the big businesses, our small businesses in New York City, our MWBEs, neighborhood level businesses, have been applying for certification, which, I think many people see as a daunting thing. We try to make it as easy as possible, but they have been wading through that paperwork so that they can be considered for that emergency food need, to help the Department of Education stand up the virtual graduations, or whatever that need may be. And so we've seen a huge influx into the program, and we've been, attempting to manage that and to support that as well as we can, and learn from those businesses all that we can about their needs during this time. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating to hear Devita talk. I have to say, like Devita, you are an amazing speaker, and you're also just coming from a place of such deep knowledge and caring. Honestly, this has been one of the most impactful panels that I've participated in during this time. And I have to say, I love the work of MWBE programs because it's a radical program in a really boring bureaucratic guise. I don't know that many people find government procurement to be like an exciting thing to talk about, but it is a specifically redistributive program. We are trying to take money, right? The city as a market actor that is going to flow to someone, and ensure that it is flowing to women, Black people, Latinx individuals, Native Americans are now part of our program, Asian individuals, like specifically redistributive. And there's never a moment to be more dedicated to that program, to the effectiveness of that program than right now, especially when the COVID story, procurement stories have been such a big part of COVID. Why didn't the government have the ventilators it needed? Why didn't government have access to the PPE? These are local manufacturing stories, and these are procurement stories. And so to be able to point in so many ways to like why a program like this is essential, and how our MWBEs are contributing to the city's survival and response, and the federal government's survival and response at this time, has been absolutely fascinating.
Can I just stand that, Dynishal, just to say that, like, that to me is also the whole thing about like intentionality in leadership. And so like we were at a prep call about this, and we were talking about in the city of New York, like what the percentage of minority business spend is. And so what was the numbers that you mentioned? Like, can you remind everybody?
Yeah, it was 28% of awards of city contracts that are covered by our program, right? So that's not like human services contracts, healthcare services, things like that, went to certified firms last year. And we've got about 10,000 firms in our certified pool.
And in the city of Boston, it's less than 5%. So like the amount of dollars that means is it's not insignificant. And this is a place where government can, with simple intentionality, this is not about like legal mumbo jumbo that it can't be done, right? It can be done. And so just another simple example for me in the city of Boston is the Boston Public Schools, 100% of the food that's being fed to the kids in the Boston Public Schools while they're all at home is coming from New Jersey. I have nothing against my brothers and sisters in New Jersey, but that is not how you have leadership and build a local economy. Like, you want to feed people in this moment, you take that USDA money and you put it back into small businesses in the city. Like, so this is where I look at this and I say there are, like, yes, there's some wholesale things that structurally that we need to change. There are also things we can be doing right now that can actually move the dime in very significant ways. And it simply requires people like leaning in and being intentional about it. If we all can have like patios in the middle of streets in every city in the country, which was unheard of in April or in February, then we certainly can do some of these other things. And that to me is like partly what we all need to do, is to lift up, like, there are solutions here that may not be as powerful as reparations, but at least are starting to go in the right direction. Not to say that we shouldn't be considering reparations. So I just think we should be doing
Jen, Jen, I wanted to piggyback, and this goes, I think, to the last question, Kobla, that we might be getting into, at least on our prep call, that really talks about like how do we codify our vision? How do we pull the levers that are at our disposal right now? How do we work with our city government, our state government, to pull the levers? For me, all politics are local. Yeah, there's excitement happening on the federal level, but we on the ground building on the local level, because those is the legislations that affect our lives deeply, impact us every single day. And so, Jen, you're absolutely right. There's some things that I can do. And to Geetika's point, like, I just had a really good friend of mine on a Zoom call in a conversation who's actually out of California, and she's out of San Francisco. Her name is Shakir Smiley, and she's the director of the Department of Equity out of city government in San Francisco. And so even though I'm all the way in Detroit, in the Midwest, I'm keeping my eye on what's happening in California. Crucial ballot proposals are on the ballot in California that really speaks to how we begin to use legislation and codify the vision of what we see as this just and equitable economy. Number one, Geetika, I'm keeping my eye on Prop 15. So when you talk about the tech industry and how they get access to this unlimited supply of kind of like free money, and how they get to play with VC dollars, and how they get to build like these amazing big scale companies, well, Prop 15 really draws like this bright red line between large and small businesses. And they're talking about raising taxes on properties that are worth more than $3 million. Basically what that is saying is that, you know what, the wealthy, the rich corporations have to start paying their fair share, particularly at a moment when city budgets are going to be hurting. And one of the things that I'm looking at right now, as it not only relates to small businesses, which is important, but how city government is going to respond to our public schools. I mean, because that is so important if we're going to talk about building out a talented pipeline that's going to make sure that our industry is sustained, right, through the years. So Prop 15 is what I'm looking at, right? Prop 16, and I go back to why I think Prop 16 is so important, because it's something that Dynishal was saying about the power of that MWBE kind of like certification. Well, Prop 16 in California basically restores affirmative action. You didn't hear me. It restores affirmative action to ensure that contracts that are submitted in the state of California actually looks at affirmative action programs, because they, prior to that, they got rid of Prop 16, and so much money and so much dollars were lost by Black and minority owned businesses, right? They were like, oh my gosh, when you don't have that certification, and I'm sure you know this, Dynishal, but when you don't have that certification, or if you don't have codified legislation that then helps to lift up Black, women-owned, minority-owned businesses, they get overlooked. And those types of things we have to legislate. I'm sorry, that is the purpose of government, is to create an equal playing field. And then I think the last thing what's important to me is policy, and I'm going to push back. Listen, I've lived in New York for almost 20 years, 2 decades, right? Hurricane Sandy, I'm a climate refugee, so Hurricane Sandy destroyed my house out on Long Island, came back to my hometown of Detroit. But I'm going to push back on New York just a little bit, because something really crucial just passed by city government, and that is this what they're calling in New York the COVID-19 recovery charge. And basically what that allows restaurateurs to do is to add a 10% charge onto a customer's total bill. Listen, this is all I have to say. If the city council is going to allow employers to add a surcharge, they have to also make sure that those same employers are paying their workers a full minimum wage. They cannot be adding a surcharge and then their employees are what we call tip wage workers, because basically what you're doing now is you're taking money out of the pockets of tip wage workers, because all they're going to do is allocate that money to their surcharge. They're going to give their servers less money in tips. Like, this is where government has to come in and do that kind of work. And so I think you're right. I think that there are policies out here we can push now. There are levers that we can pull right now, but y'all, we got to bone up. We got to be knowledgeable of what's happening so we can fight to win for our people.
That's really helpful. Actually, I'm looking at the questions from some of our folks out there in the audience who are really excited about the exchange here. And that actually is what the first question that I'll jump into, which is how would you define a system? And I think you've answered some from your perspective, Devita, but how would you define a system that you could implement tomorrow, both to deal with this pandemic and post-pandemic, to specifically address the challenges of small business in the food and beverage space, including the fact that the way food business is structured today is not designed for small players? And I'll put that out to anyone to jump in on.
So we've been trying to spend some time on this, thinking about, for example, in the restaurant industry, what is it we actually could do to change the economic model, to actually provide fair wages, right? Get rid of tipped wages, fair wages to everybody who's working there, front of the house, back of the house, that the supply chain makes sense all the way back to the farmer. And so looking at, honestly thinking about, can you steal from what the Cheesecake Factory does and others? So one of the things that they rely on is group purchasing. They use the value of volume to drive down prices, which is sometimes a very bad thing, but in some cases it can be enormously helpful. And so one of the things we've been trying to think about is there a strategy we can use to look at kind of cooperative, shared services, group purchasing, other ways where we are trying to put more margin into the business owners' pockets that they then can be using with their workers, and really trying to look at, as I said, look at this from a systematic kind of side of things rather than trying to look business by business by business. We keep hearing about the digital divide in our businesses and the challenge that they have to even be online in this moment, and that when they are online, they're stuck with all of the apps that we know that are stealing all the money from them, and so not making them work. And so again, looking at what is the local community-based answer to that, and is there one? Again, put people back to work, supporting one another, changing the economic equation to be about those businesses and their employees and kind of food and health. And I think for us, that's where we're trying to think about what is the scale and what is the difference that can look like, and can we start from a strong value proposition on the financial model that then builds the economic reality around it, with whether that's investment, equity investment, the purchasing pieces of this, thinking about ownership of buildings and land that can go back to the business owners so that they now have equity in their lives that can give them strength in what they're doing. So I feel like there is this, it's an upending of the structure that, but is focused specifically on this question about really wealth creation for small businesses.
Got it. Another question that came across, sorry, I'm just reading these here on the fly. What are some past and current companies or organizations that have been successful in mobilizing restaurant consumer activists to move towards a solidarity economy?
Here in New York, the Restaurant Opportunity Center, labor supported, believe nonprofit organization, but they also operated a restaurant focused on worker issues within the food industry, but also a site for consumer activism and consumer learning about kind of labor issues in the restaurant industry in the city. So ROC, it would be one to look up.
Thank you. I know a couple of you have a hard stop, so I want to squeeze one or two more questions in. Dynishal, back onto you. I got a few questions about MWBE and how to go about certifying and where to find the resources. If you just give a quick, plug to how folks can do that. There also have been a couple of questions about the challenges of getting through the application. And so just kind of resources.
We're doing weekly MWBE certification webinars. We alternate between morning and afternoon, and we're rolling those out into additional languages to create more accessibility for limited English proficiency communities in our most COVID impacted neighborhoods. I'll put up our Eventbrite link so you can connect directly to those webinars, but I just put my email address in there first, because if you've attempted this and you're struggling, if you think it's too daunting and you're scared to take the first step, or you want someone to hold your hand through the process, we have all of those resources. We have no metric of success other than people getting through this process successfully and increasing the diversity of the city's vendor pool measured by contract awards and payments. So I want to do this. And so you've got a friend in the trenches now. And I think one thing that's been really useful at this time, I mean, Geetika mentioned the fact of the wildfires in California, right? Our country actually burning, and our federal executive denying aid, right, to California, at least for a time earlier this week. New York City, an epicenter of the COVID epidemic, being declared an anarchist jurisdiction. Every time we think it can't get worse, they up the ante, right? And you would constantly be rope-a-dope if all you did was respond to those assaults. That's part of the strategy. And so instead, I really find comfort in a bureaucracy. I still know great people from my days in law school who've been working at the Department of Justice, and they didn't leave their jobs at DOJ under this administration because they know that the Civil Rights Division will rise again. And their work, to some extent, they've still been able to carry out during this period. And the SBA, even within this administration, the SBA attempted to be responsive to critiques of that first round of PPP funding, include more CDFIs, do things to increase access for micro businesses and immigrant-owned businesses in the second rounds of funding. So even when we're getting crap from the top, know that in the trenches, you don't have to be cynical about everyone in government, that there are people who are laboring here, and because this is their contribution to a mission, this is a public service mission for all of us as well. So you've got a friend in SBS. If you're interested in getting MWBE certified, believe me, you can get it done, and we will hold your hand through that process. So I'll add some additional links in the chat, but dgross@sbs.nyc.gov is a fine place to turn if you need a helping hand.
Thank you so much. I know we're short on time. There's a couple of good quick questions here. Devita, any Chicago organizations that are doing the kind of work that FoodLab is doing in Detroit?
Yeah, not specifically, which is why FoodLab Detroit piloted FoodLab Chicago this year in collaboration with two community development corporations, one being the Greater Chatham Initiative, the other one being South Shore, both on the south side of Chicago. Like, Chicago is this amazing epicenter of food, but its really strong point is food that is added value product, right? Chicago is a wizard at the logistical moving in and out of food. Just like Detroit moves automobiles all around the planet, Chicago can move some food in and around the world. They are a logistical genius at doing that, but not so much in the equitable kind of neighborhood development of food-based businesses and community. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Y'all say a prayer for me if y'all praying people, but we submitted our second round for grant funding from Chicago Community Trust, our funder and partner, CCT, shout out to them. And hopefully we can do FoodLab Chicago again. And if so, we'll get funding from our partner. And I'm so excited to dig deeper into the south side of Chicago.
Well, on that note, I thank you for kicking this next few days of conversations off on a very strong start. I think the other panels will have their work cut out for them in terms of content. I want to thank you all certainly for your time and your sharing, and I look forward to coordinating, collaborating with you all. And we have our next panel coming up at 4.
It's 5:30, isn't it?
5:30. Yeah, I've lost track of time at this point. I just want to keep talking. And so please, everyone who's on the call, please join in for the next panel. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you all. And again, this is recorded, so you will have the opportunity to listen to some of this as well. We lost Geetika, but I want to thank Geetika. I want to thank Devita, Jen, and Dynishal immensely, and our interpreters for an amazing job today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. What a
Thank
pleasure.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.